Jared Randall, the news from not so far north. At a special spot today for me, which I don't need to share exactly what that means or what that is, but it seems to have been important that I'm here talking about what I'm about to talk about. This whole thing with different dimensions of existence, if you will, of consciousness, if you will, of literal, like the physical dimensions that make up the underlying structure of reality. Well, as I think I said in my last video, or very recently, the map isn't the territory, right? These are all just ideas, symbols, word symbols, mind symbols, very based in the life that we're in. And so, therefore, all these things are, well, they can seem a bit mutable and shiftable and changeable, like they're not stable. And I think that's why, in our current society, we've latched on very much to material science because we feel like that's stable. We feel like that's repeatable. It doesn't change. It's not mutable. And therefore, we can rest on it. And that's completely understandable. We want to find what's most stable, to rest our lives on, to make decisions. But I don't think that means that we shouldn't be thinking about other ways of looking at the world, of looking at our reality, of looking at existence, the experience of existence. And that's a lot of what I'm talking about. When we look at things from a so-called higher dimension, right? The fifth dimension, the sixth dimension, and so on. Taking our own experiences as, say, the third dimension, I take it as primarily human beings right now are experiencing the third and fourth dimensions, space-time. And again, these things are mutable. Like when we move from an understanding of physics to metaphysics, and then different ways even of considering those. There's a lot of disagreement, and it's not so much disagreement as it is just different perspectives. And the question is always, what does that perspective give us? But we need to take this understanding of the fifth dimension a level deeper. And that is to understand what we're doing when we access it. Because again, we don't live at the fifth dimension. That's not what this life is about. There are energies at the fifth dimension, but it is more like an interface, in my knowing, between lots of different possibilities, between different timelines where things are slightly different to greatly different from what we're currently experiencing in our now, what we remember experiencing in our past, and what we are conjuring up in our futures. And I've been talking a bit about the fifth dimension being, tricksy. One of the problems with the fifth dimension, problems in terms of our accessing it, in terms of our understanding of it, is that we access it very much keyed by our emotions and our imaginations. And I've been talking a lot about the four energies, right? There's the wands, the fire, the spirit. There's the cups, the waters, the intuition, the emotions, the heart. There's the swords, the mind, the logic, the reason, but also imagination sits here. Imagination sits here. And that's important. And then there's the earth, the discs, the pentacles, the embodiment, what we're actually able to bring down and put into some kind of third, fourth dimensional structure that sits and stays, right? You know, there's a reason why crystals are useful to us when we're working with energy. It's because they are an embodiment, a structure that is so stable, right? That's what a crystal is. It's energy pulled down into matter in its most, I mean, the term we have to use for it is crystallized form, right? It's organized, it's latticed, it's stable. So when we are accessing the fifth dimension, we are primarily accessing that through the cups and the swords energy, the emotions and the mind, respectively. And that is that's a tricksy place for us to be in, because we can imagine a lot of things. We can feel a lot of things. And these things are possible. It doesn't really matter if you can imagine it, it's possible. If you can feel it, then you felt it. You vibrated with it. It doesn't matter what it is. You can vibrate with dragons on an alien world in another galaxy, even in another universe, and you vibrated with that. If it's out there, you just vibrated with it. You just connected to it, because that's what everything is. Ultimately, it's vibrations, it's frequencies, and the problem with that is, when we're working with the fifth dimension, we get in there with our emotions, with our imaginations. We can almost make things happen. We can bring things about. See, what we're really doing is we're thinking about what might be called down from the fire above and grounded down into the earth below. We're always doing this. Everything we do in life is working with these energies. We can't get away from it. The whole point of working with these energies is to be aware of it, right? It's not like it only exists when we're thinking about it. These energies are part of human becoming. Okay, this is how we can access sort of the backstage of reality, as some people call it, the underlying frameworks, the meta, whatever you want to think about it. It doesn't really matter. The problem then is when we approach the 5D, and this is why I'm so trying to put a message out there of like, be careful if folks are like, you gotta get to the 5D, you gotta get to the 5D, you gotta get to the 5D. If you don't ascend to the 5D, if you miss this window to ascend to the fifth dimension, guys, that's bullshit. Okay? Because the fifth dimension is accessed via your emotions and your imaginings. And if you're trying to access it with worry, with fear, oh no, I'm going to miss a window, that's the energy you're in. You didn't raise your vibration to get to the fifth dimension. You actually sunk down into a lower vibration, a lower frequency for you to access the fifth dimension. And now you're pulling in possibilities by your imagination, by your feelings, your emotions. You're pulling that in to your reality. And once you start pulling it into your reality, what you pull in the most is what you're going to ground, is what you're going to embody into the ground, into the earth, to that crystallized form of the stuff we actually see around us, the people we actually see around us, the relationships that we have, which are also, they're not any relationship that's here in this third, fourth dimensional zone that we're in. That is earth, okay? That is earth. That is not just water. That is not just cups. That is not just swords. That is not just thoughts. Okay? It is not just fire and spirit. It is fire and spirit brought down, passed through the water, passed through the air, right? The heart, the mind. And we ground it. We set things in place. And once we do, it's very difficult. Sometimes the more we set a particular relationship in place, the harder it is to get away from that, right? To where you end up with relationships that are ruined, and that is the state of the relationship. It's not that the relationship is gone, it's still there, but it's ruined. When we, as it's been important, but in some ways almost too trendy to cut people out of our lives, right? This is not to be done lightly. Sometimes it's really important to do, especially with people who are close to us, right? In that lattice work, in that crystal of world that we're building around us, right? Sometimes it's necessary, but also sometimes we're thinking that way too much. Sometimes we're too much in worry. Sometimes we're too much in fear. And we're accessing the fifth dimension when we do that. I want to tell a little story to illustrate this a bit. In my family, especially on one side of my family, I grew up with a lot of worry. And it'd be the type of worry, like I remember at one point when my siblings and I were a little older, and some of us were at a family gathering and my siblings were not yet. And it became this, oh, where are they? They should be here by now. They might have gotten in a car accident. And it jumped so quickly to basically imagining them, in a car accident, like wrapped around a tree or something, And again, there were reasons why that was a sort of, there had been a car accident previously. My car accident with my siblings in the car. Whole nother story, whole nother video probably. But that's the point, right? We bring ourselves and our experiences to things, and we can let that pull us into worry and fear. And when you do that, when that happened at that family gathering, we were accessing the fifth dimension. We were imagining the possibilities and starting to calculate in our heads the probabilities of, wait a minute, were they actually in a car accident? Did something bad happen to them? And it's really important to not do this. It's really important to not, we all do this, but not to stay in that, right? And some of us were like, whoa, they probably just stopped for gas or to get a coffee or who knows what. Like, there's a billion different explanations for why they're not here yet. And they were fine. It was the case, right? That I don't even remember what it was. Probably was nothing. They probably just left late. The point is, again, the more you ground in fear and worry, the more what you're fearing and worrying is gonna be what you get. Okay? But there's another reality somewhere. There's a timeline, and maybe it's only a sliver of one, where something did happen. And here's the thing. There's a version of me that's in that reality that experienced that. I can imagine it. I can think through it. I can think of how my life would be different. I can do the whole damn thing in my head. That's how this works. But I'm in this one, and it didn't happen in this one. It didn't happen in this one. And I'm not saying that this means if you only, think positive thoughts. Nothing bad is ever going to happen in your life, and you're never going to get that phone call. That's not what this is about, right? It is about direction. What are you pulling into your life? People talk about manifestation and the law of attraction. It's not so much what you're attracting or what you're pulling out of you to manifest in the world. It's more about what are you grounding into place around you, the life that you have. It's making certain things more probable and other things less probable. And what does that actually look like? What are the details of that? Right? If we sit around in fear all the time and every little thing that could possibly be going wrong, we're imagining that it is going wrong, that is the world we're going to live in, and it's the world we're going to strengthen around us. It's the world we're going to start to more and more and more crystallize around us, and that will be our experience of the world. If we don't do that, if when we come to those fear points and those worry points, because they will come up, if we instead imagine the best, if we hope for the best, if we think the best of others until we know for sure that that's not the case, then we ground in something else instead. We ground in love. And that'll be the timeline that we're in. The more and more we do that, the more and more we'll be building out that world around us. And we do this individually, and we do this collectively. I heard someone talk recently on the Next Level Soul podcast. Some other folks probably heard this, about how all these different possibilities, these all timelines get sort of flattened. And that's also what I've received. I think of it as the Keystone timeline. And that's what the sixth dimension is about. There's a main timeline, if you will, a trunk that's being built. We're running all these possibilities, and they get flattened down to one that gets chosen, gets selected. And we're in partnership with that. So, when we direct away from fear and worry, and we move instead toward trust, belief, and hope and love. I'm not talking about religious belief. That's not what I'm talking about here. And I'm not talking about, hope for the best, but then don't do anything. That's not the kind of hope I'm talking about either. I'm not talking about the yes we can that doesn't, that never does, that never gets there. I'm talking about the hope that pushes through that and finally does ground things into place. Right? The next step of this conversation, it gets a little tough because there's more to it. Part of me doesn't even want to go here yet because it is a whole video, and I don't think I want to end it on this. But I feel the pull to start talking about some of it, like a preview, and that is that there's something like an enemy team. Okay, it's not people though. It's not people. It's not other people. It's not other beings in this third, fourth dimensional existence that we're in. It's not. That's important. I'm not saying that some of us aren't cooperating with that enemy team. Not even cooperating. That's the wrong word. Being used. That's the right word. Being used. Being sucked from the inside out. Having the energy sucked out of you. And being a portal for other people's energies to be sucked in the same way. That's what I'm talking about. We talk in our society right now a lot about narcissism, narcissists, people with personality disorders, all these types of things. And, there's a whole psychological perspective to all these things that I'm not going to try and refute or deny or whatever. So those are all one way of thinking about it. This is a different way, and I think it's an important way, is to realize what was realized a long time ago by shamans and wise women and wise men and witches, and that's not a bad word. I identify as a witchy person, okay? I'd rather identify more and more as a person who's connected to the druidic, but let's face it, the druids got labeled as witches, and that's how that went. That's another one. And that right there is, I mean, that other whole video could illustrate the whole point here, what happens, and why this is so important to realize. Because I've been a part in this life and in past lives. I've been a part in failing at that. And that's part of why these videos are going out. So that's what I'm here to do. Is to do my little part in making it better and doing it differently. And I'm telling you, don't go around seeing other people as the problem. The moment you do that, you're sucked into it and you become the problem too. And that's really hard. That's really tough. But that's what we gotta do. And there's no limit here. I'm not saying you don't, again, cut people out of your life is the going terminology, right? I'm not saying you don't do that sometimes. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. When you really know you're dealing with a person who is just hurtful, and if you really understand it, you realize how much they're hurting themselves. And you realize there's not really anything you can say or do to help them. It's the kindest thing to do to not keep leading them along, putting them in a place where they're spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. It's going to be really, really tough for them, but it is what they need. Something is eating them from the inside and trying to eat others too. Okay? Again, there's lots of different layers and ways of looking at this, and it doesn't mean that one is right and the other is wrong. And that's not what this is about. And if you get pulled into that, you're right back. You're right back into the fight, right? To win the fight, it's not to fight. That's the fight. And this is not... I'm a fighter. But I fight to win. And that's how we win. This has been the news from Not So Far North. I'm Jared Randall, wishing you all the love, peace, and light you can stand. Good day.